Krai Andrey is the leader of the world's strongest clan, the Grieving Soul, and he is widely respected for his wisdom and power. By the reality, he is a total weakling and just wants to find a way to quit his job. We see Krai standing a line at Treasure Hunter clan meeting, and he looks like he really doesn't want to be here, but he got no choice. Treasure hunters in this world are basically celebrities because they explore treasure vaults all over the world and risk their life against phantoms, all with no health insurance. It's a dangerous job, but the promise of fame and riches compels dozens of people to become treasure hunters every year. And to that end, they often join a clan like First Steps, which is why they renowned in the capital as one of the best ever exist. It consists of a collection of parties that come together to assist one another, and the reason there are so many people here to join is because unless your name is Jin Wu, there's a limit to how far you can get as a solo hunter. Krai was trying to get this over with without drawing much attention to himself, but out of nowhere, the girl behind him starts talking and asks if he is here to join a party as well. Krai tries to use the age-old tactic of ignoring her until she goes away, but before he knows it, she has already walked in front of him and is introducing herself. Her name is Ruta and she's a level 3 hunter, so she extends a hand to Krai, but he refuses to shake hands with her, although he does give her his name. Ruta is disappointed that Krai didn't shake her hand, but she gets over it and starts talking about herself some more. She has been so hunting until now, but she came across a vault called the White Wolf Den, and she couldn't handle on her own, so she wanted to come to join a party. Just then the man in front of them turns around and tells Ruta that she should be try and take on vault as dangerous as the White Wolf Den, while she's still only level 3. He smirks and calls her an inexperienced amateur because even if she's level 3, she's still basically a beginner compared to the other professional hunters out there. As the argument gets more heated, Ruta becomes really angry and Krai really wishes he had stayed home so he wouldn't have gotten involved with them. Ruta pulls out her knives as about to attack the man, but before she does anything, a guard comes over and reminds Ruta that these aren't the streets of London. So she keeps this up, she's going to be banned from the clan meeting. She realizes she lost her temper for a moment, so she puts her knives away and apologizes for the outburst. All or Krai tries to act like he's not here. A little while later, Krai makes it into the clan meeting and Ruta is still with him because he's the only person she knows here. She's amazed by all the powerful hunters here and honestly feels a little overwhelmed since she has never been to a place like this before. She asks to Krai if he has been here before, so he tells her that this is his 5th time here and Ruta thinks he must suck at being a hunter if he has to keep coming back to the recruitment meeting. Among hunters, talent is everything, so even a random nobody can make a name for themselves and climb for the ranks. Ruta notices a party in flashing attire on the other side of the room, so she asked to Krai about it and he informed her that the party is called Arc Brave, and of all the parties recruiting today, they are undeniably the strongest. As a group, they once managed to complete a level 7 vault with just 6 members, so they are widely respected, and if she gets scouted by their leader Arc Rodan, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a good hunter career, although he's pretty picky with his selection criteria. Ruta is intrigued to learn more, so she asks about the empty desk over in the corner of the room, but before Krai can say anything the guy from before comes over and tells her he will explain everything. Ruta doesn't really want his help after the argument they had outside. But Greg goes on to explain anyway and tells her that the desk belongs to the party that founded this clan, the Grievers. The party was agreed with talented youngsters who arrived in the capital a few years ago and made a name for themselves as the Grieving Souls. But what the others don't know is that the legendary party consists of Krai's childhood friends. Apparently there were rumors floating around with the Grieving Soul party would be recruiting today. Since their spot is emptied, Greg assumes the rumors false. Just then, a kid who came here hoping to apply to the Grieving Souls party noticed that they are here yet, so he becomes irate because he believes he's going to become the strongest hunter in the world someday. So the only party worth joining is the Creating Souls. Greg finds the kid amusing, but Ruta doesn't have the guts to say anything since the kid actually has a higher level than her. Just then a girl named Tino steps up and is prepared to shove the red-haired kid up with violence, because she's the only one who deserves to join the Grieving Souls party. Her partner tries calming her down since this isn't worth causing a scene, even if the red-haired guy was being really annoying. For a second, it looked like they had calmed down enough to avoid a fight, but then Greg joins in with his first-class institution. And all of a sudden, the entire world is supporting the fight, all gloves are off now, so Tino and the kids square up to face each other. Krai can tell things are going to get haptics real soon and he doesn't want to be around when that happens, so he asks Ruta to come outside with him. As the fight is about to start, Tino already intends to kill the kid over what was essentially bragging, and she's just called Saul later to handle the murder charges, or at least that was the plan until she sends a familiar presence nearby, and the second she spots Krai she forgets all about the fight and charges straight for him. Krai is caught off guard by the sudden attack, so he stumbles backwards and Tino nervously turns calling him master and asking if he saw her lose her temper over there. Ark then comes over as well and greet Krai since he has been waiting for his arrival. They wouldn't have been able to start the clan meeting until Krai arrived anyway since he is both the clan master and the leader of grieving souls. Everyone who didn't already recognize him was shocked to hear this because that means Krai must be the most important person here. However, all the attention he's getting is making him feel sick, so he really just wants to go home. Several years ago, when Krai and his childhood friends first arrived in the capital, they were clearing all the beginner vaults in record time, but there was just one problem. Krai had no idea what he was doing. He got saved from a monster and his teammates thought he was intentionally lowering his guard so he could act as bait, and he goes with it, but he was totally about to get chopped. They all shared the same dream to become exceptional hunters, but unlike the other 5, Krai is exceptionally ordinary. He knew that sooner or later he would become nothing but a burden to the party, and he didn't want his friends to resent him for his weakness, so he made the decision to leave the party on his own. However, when he tried to quit, it somehow ended up with him being appointed as the leader of the party. That's how he got to his current position as the leader of his truly gifted childhood friends, but he really wishes he could just retire from being a hunter. Ruta and Greg still can't believe they were talking to the clan master the entire time, and while Krai in his chair, Ark comes over and asks Krai showed up late because he wanted to observe the crowd as one of the common folk. Krai denies this and says he just overslept, but Ark isn't listening and firmly believes that Krai show up late on purpose. For some reason, no matter how much Krai tries to explain himself, people always misunderstand him in a way that makes him look better than he actually is. Tino doesn't like how close Ark is with Krai, so she wants to have him kicked out of the clan, but Krai isn't going to do that. Tino is at level 4 hunter, who also happens to be an apprentice to one of Krai's childhood friends, Liz, so she hangs around him a lot. Ark asked Krai if he has any good candidates in mind for recruitment, but there honestly isn't a need to add any new members to the clan right now, although since Ark almost never actually recruits new members, Krai takes the opportunity and asks if Ark was seriously considered any recommendations he makes. Ark says he will accept anyone Krai chooses, and this is a huge surprise to everyone, so the vice captain tries to talk him out of such a rash decision. However, Ark cuts her off since anyone Krai chooses would be worthy of joining his party. Tino begins blushing because she thinks Krai is thinking about recommending her, but she also doesn't like Ark's, so she's a bit conflicted about whether to accept or not. All of a sudden, the kid from earlier whose name is Gilbert, by the way, comes out to the front of the crowd and he is totally ready to beg, if that's what it takes to be accepted by Krai. Krai tries thinking about whether Gilbert would be a good choice or not, but he quickly gives up because he is a terrible judge at character. He has no idea how to tell if someone will become strong in the future, so he decides to lead up to pure luck. He tells Gilbert that he is willing to recommend him, but he has one condition before that. As a hunter, the most important thing is to make sure you always win. If he lacks strength, he will end up putting his party members in danger, so Krai wants him to demonstrate that he has the ability to always win. Also, since Krai began his career as a hunter, he has never lost before, although that's because he has never actually been in a real fight. Anyway, Krai takes off one of his ring artifacts and announces to every hunter here that the first person to present this ring to Ark would be accepted into his party, and with that he tosses the ring into the wild to watch the chaos unfold. The first one to get the ring is Gilbert, but that doesn't last long because none him a second later, Tino jumps down at him and knees his face so hard that he gets sent all the way across the room. Gilbert probably needs a doctor now, but no one's focused on him right now because the ring is currently rolling across the floor, and while everyone is initially hesitant to act, it doesn't take long before they all start fighting over it. At this point, Krai decides to take his leave, and even though the bar is getting destroyed as he leaves, he says it's not his problem and goes home. However, the next morning it became his problem as the bar fight made front-page news. Apparently the entire place was leveled because in the fight, but luckily there were no civilian casualties at the end of the day. However, as a result of the events, Eva tells him that the Explorers Association once had a private meeting with him, and Krai already knows that means they're going to yell at him. He asked how Ark took the news, and Eva tells him that Ark actually took it pretty well and laughed it off. Since Ark probably isn't mad, Krai wants to take advantage of his good mood and send him the bill to rebuild the bar, as well as asked him to go handle the meeting with the association, but Eva informed him that the meeting is specifically meant for him, so there's no way he's getting out of it this time. Even if he tries ignoring it, the association manager Gark is just going to hunt him down like he always does, so Krai caves in and agrees to go. But he will be using his secret weapon to get over as soon as possible. And that secret weapon is to grovel and apologize. He also argues that the only damage was to the bar, and since no one was hurt, and the bar owner has been compensated to cover the repairs of the bar, there shouldn't be any further issues. Gark hasn't even gotten a chance to yell or cry yet, but after seeing Krai apologize, he just lets it go for now. However, even if there aren't any official complaints against him, he still needs to take responsibility for his actions, which is why Gark is assigning him a request and he has no right to refuse. The association gets all kinds of quests for hunters, but with such a large volume they are bound to be quests that are so difficult or pay so little that no one wants to do them. These quests are the hunters called chores, and Krai really doesn't want to have to deal with one of those, so tries to put in on an act and saying is too important to be stuck with the chore. However, Gark isn't letting him get out of this, so he's forced to pick one. Krai opens the quest book and starts looking through it for the easiest quest, and at everything available the lowest level is 3, so he picks that one. He was planning on just dumping the work on Ark, and when he goes to look for him, he's informed by Tino that Ark is currently on a meeting with some nobles. He's going to be gone for a while and no one else is here, so he doesn't have many options to ditch his work. Just then, he notices that Tino is wearing his ring, meaning she was the one who won his little game yesterday. But that aside, he asked her if she's free at the moment. Tino was excited because she thinks she wants to ask her out on a date, but to her dismay tells her he has a quest for her. She immediately runs away, but even though she's fast, Krai has his ways of catching up to her. He summons his chained dog Silver and instructs it to capture Tino, and before long Krai has her tied up in a chair, so he can discuss the quest with her. She feels betrayed because she just wanted to go on a date with Krai, but now he's forcing her to go on this crappy quest all by herself. Krai asks so the problem is that she doesn't want to do it alone, and Tino responds that she wouldn't be opposed to the idea if Krai would join her. However, that would mean Krai would have to do actual work, so he sent Tino on the mission with a bunch of the hunters he met yesterday. With that end of this part, if you want next part, let us know in comment box. The anime started with loner boy Haruka, who hides near some goblins. The idiot blows his cover by stepping on the smallest twig ever, so the goblins chase after him. Haruka smiled with utter confidence as he jumps into the air and all the goblins fall into his trap. Haruka is very pleased with himself as he's doing a great job surviving alone in another world. A look back shows how Haruka got himself in this situation. Haruka has always been a loner, and he explains to us that it's because he just never wanted anything to do with his classmates. He didn't like any of them, and they would just get in the way of what he finds most important, and that's reading. As Haruka looked around his classroom, the divide among the students was very clear. There were the popular girls, the delinquents, the jocks, the class rep, the nerds, and the others category. Haruka didn't belong to any of these groups, but he wouldn't have it any other way. This was when a magic circle appeared out of nowhere. Haruka was excited because it was just like the ones he had read in manga, but he remembered that going to another world is a pain in the butts. The heroes in the manga always ended up having to be around a bunch of people, but that sounded like torture to Haruka. He tried his best to get out of the classroom, but it didn't go so well. All the other students panicked as the magic circle expanded, but Haruka cleverly escaped through an air vent. Unfortunately for him, the magic circle chased him up there, and he found himself in the generic white void place. How look exactly what to expect from reading so much manga. He wondered where the typical king was and when his daughter, who was beyond the reach of any nerd, would show up. Some old guy frantically signaled to him, so Haruka realized that this guy was some sort of god. It turns out that the teleporting was first come first served, so Haruka's classmates were teleported already and Haruka was left behind. Haruka was allowed to pick his status and skills just before being sent to his new world. A giant board appeared with all the options, but Haruka was disappointed about something. This was the first time the old god summoned so many people, so all of the cheat skills were already taken, and only the worthless ones were left. Haruka took a look at his options, but they were all terrible. One skill was just being able to hold a stick. Some other ones were just good overall general health and walking. Haruka made himself feel even worse by seeing some of the overpowered skills that he missed out on, like 4-element magic. Back to the bad stuff, Haruka found titles like Shut In and Neat. Haruka demanded for the old god to give him more options because he wouldn't even be able to pass the first village with the ones he had to choose from. The old god became fed up, so he decided to just give Haruka all the remaining skills at once. Haruka gained all the leftover worthless skills, and he was teleported. In the new world, Haruka is supplied with a bag that can hold unlimited items. Haruka gears up and checks his stats. His stats screen tells him to roll some dice, and he remembers reading about the skill. It allows him to allocate points by rolling dice. Haruka curses the old guy for giving him such a useless skill, and he rolls the dice. He rolls a double M, but Haruka has no clue what that means. He assumes the worst as he thinks that M stands for masochist. However, his stats screen just tells them to choose which stat he wants to add to. Haruka doesn't think that raw stats will help him survive with his terrible abilities, so he chooses to put the points into luck. His strategy is to completely ignore a balanced build, and instead he will just max out luck. Just then Haruka realizes that the M stood for max because his luck stat is now maxed out. Haruka surprised when he notices that he has 2 extra skills and C of useless abilities. He assumes that it's because he was summoned alone. Haruki's loner title means that he's the loner with no friends and he cannot form a party. His servitude skill allows him to command others, and it was given to him because of his loner status. That's pretty cool, but it also means that Haruka has to say goodbye to his dreams of having a harem. Haruka wonders where all his classmates are, but it doesn't matter because he can't party with them anyway. Haruka decides to just begin his journey, and he wants to start by securing a base of operation. It's pretty hard to see through the forest, so Haruka is worried about a monster showing up. He wonders if he has a skill that could be useful, but the only one that comes to mind is the skill that allows him to doze off. Haruka tries on the contact lenses he has in his bag and finds that it's actually super useful. It allows him to see a bunch of extra stuff, and he finds that it grants him the appraisal skill. This leads to Haruka finding an edible mushroom that draws out latent abilities. His bottomless bag lets him take as many as he wants, so he apologizes to it for thinking it was useless earlier. Haruka chugs down some water, but he hears something in the distance. This sound leads him to a cave, and he prays that he doesn't find a monster. Haruka's bag came with a bunch of camping stuff, so he decides to make this cave his base. He uses temperature magic to light some twigs on fire, and determines that the leftover skills are actually pretty useful. Haruka checks his stats again and finds that his temperature magic leveled up, which unlocks fire magic. Haruka worries about what he will do if a monster appears because he can only smack it with the sticker right now, but he just ends up falling asleep. The next day, Haruka wakes to find everything is okay. He has items that repel monsters and his shut-in title protects his living space. Haruka can now use fire magic to start fires, so he cooked himself some breakfast. He had some beef jerky in his bag, and he had some of the mushrooms he found the day before. The food is delicious. Haruka is very grateful for his villager starter bag. It's more than just a villager bag though, so Haruka thinks it's more like a bag for a survivalist. Haruka heads out to find more food for later, but he knows that the main concern right now is how to protect himself from monsters. Just then Haruka finds the last thing he wanted to see: 2 goblins. They are small fry monsters, but their stats are higher than expected. Haruka wonders if he can even win, but he realizes that it doesn't matter because you will have to learn to deal with monsters one way or another. Unfortunately, Haruka doesn't think that his stick will do much. Haruka does have a skill called wrapping, which allows him to wrap all sorts of things with magic and grants various effects. This seems to make his stick stronger, so Haruka is determined to surpass everyone even without any cheat skills. Haruka begins his first attack ever, and he brutally beats down on the first unsuspecting goblin. The second one tries to attack him, but its moves are pretty lame and Haruka easily dodges them. Haruka somehow knows how to use a new power, and he eliminates the second goblin. Afterwards, Haruka is pleased after winning his first battle, and he heads back to base. He brought back one of the clubs that the goblin used, but he determined that his stick is still better. Haruka is excited to find that he leveled up and all his stats more than doubled. His cane mastery leveled up as well, which is strange because he just swung his stick around a few times. Haruka got magic confusion as well, which probably came from him enchanting his stick with magic. His calisthenics went up as well because Haruka has never missed a morning exercise. Haruka is exaggerating quite a bit though, as he has only been in this new world for 2 days. Later, Haruka is tired of eating mushrooms already. He would rather eat meat, but he knows that he would be schooled by the class rep for being ungrateful. With his meal done, Haruka decides to try out and enhancing himself. This magic infusion enhances his physical and magical defenses. Haruka's appraisal skill has also reached level 2, but he wonders why it's showing a bunch of question marks on all his stuff. Haruka decides not to overthink things and he leaves. He celebrates as the force blesses him with something already, but he realizes that it's just another mushroom. Haruka searches for meat that might grow out of trees, but he remembers that he's supposed to be practicing his magic. Haruka finds that his enhanced body is much lighter, so much so that it feels like he is teleporting. That isn't all, as his dexterity is insane now too. Haruka finds a more powerful goblin, but he easily defeats it. He takes out another, so he is confident that he could defeat even a group of 3 of them now. Haruka actually runs into a group of 3 goblins, but he's a coward, and he decides that he has had enough fighting for the day. Haruka recaps his day, which consisted of his goblin battle and magic studying at night. On day 5, Haruka succeeded in defeating a goblin with the single strike, and he decorated his base with some fancy stuff he made with magic. Haruka is once again pretty pleased as his life in this new world is starting to come together. That night, Haruka chases a meaty rabbit as he's desperate to eat some meat. Just then, Haruka detects her presence and he instantly determines that it's not a goblin. It turns out to be his classmates, but Haruka is disappointed to see that it's the delinquents. Haruka would rather not get involved with them, but he senses that another group is in the other direction. His clairvoyance still allows him to see who it is, but he's horrified to see that it's the popular girls. The jocks are also rapidly approaching, the nerds are nearby too, but after talking to them from time to time in his old world, Haruka would rather take a pass on seeing them. That just leaves the class rep and her friends. Haruka knows that it would be best if he had some friends in this harsh world, and he has known the class rep since grade school. Haruka decides to at least say hello, but he stops himself. He realizes that he feels really free and isolated right now. He can live the way he wants without anyone butting in, and he wouldn't exchange that for anything. Haruka makes his final decision, which is to conquer this new world all alone. And with that, we have come to the end of this part. Stay tuned for next part. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.